Welcome to MTG Ectoplasm, your home for Spirit Tribal and Magic the Gathering. I'm your host, White, aka D Blanco, a medium that wears an extra extra large. You can reach out to me on Twitter at MTG Ectoplasm, or you can email me directly at mtgectoplasm@gmail.com. Let me know how am I doing. Am I doing a good job, a bad job, or I shouldn't quit my day job? Now, like I ask each and every single episode, do me a favor, hit that follow, like, subscribe button. I don't care where you're streaming it. You could be right now on Twitch, Twitter, uh, YouTube. You could be listening on Spotify, SoundCloud, or what is up? The Google Podcast and the Apple Podcast. Just do me a favor. Due to these algorithms, if you want people to know more about this content and know about what's going on in the world of spirits or Magic the Gathering, you got to hit that follow, like, subscribe button. And please do me a favor, share. Share this with your friends and family, because if they like Magic as much as you like Magic, you know they're going to enjoy the show. Now, before we come on, I do each and every single episode, I want to thank the person who drives the show. Now, for those who don't know, we started the stream a little late because we had some technical difficulties. Thanks to this young lady, the Ravishing One, she was able to fix it. So let me bring on the Ravishing One, the Ravishing Renata. How you doing there, Ravishing?
I'm doing good.
Oh, I know you were a little under stress.
A little flustered.
Yeah. We have a big episode today. We have a young man who didn't just take names and kick ass. He did a lot more than that, and especially represented spirits. And this was a huge episode. So we had a lot of technical difficulties, but this young lady found it. So let me give her a applause. There you go. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. In the very beginning, we got a little nervous. We got a little skittish. We were about to start the stream, and it just went. Yeah, it was just downhill. But now it's time. Okay, it's a moral imperative. Let me just preface this. This young man has blown up Pioneer like no one else has before. The reason why I say it this way is that everybody and the mother has been copying and emulating this deck. I've seen, as you know, there's a young man in Tokyo, or sorry, Japan. His name is Hirotsuki. He has a version of the mono blue snow build, and it's been a great deck, and it's a version that I use, something comparable to it. Now, this young man who I'm about to bring on, he changed it, he modified it, he made it his own. Let me just tell you, this is the flavor of the week. This is some hotness. I've seen YouTubers left and right talking about him, like Nikachu MTG. I've seen Spirit Masters like Andre Segura talk about it. He's the toast of the town right now when it comes to Pioneer. Like I tell you, every single time, every single week, don't sleep on Spirits. Spirits is the hot, sexy deck that people don't know or are unaware of. And it doesn't matter which version you get. Like I had Renf, like last week, he plays Bant. I love Azorius, but I'm more of a mono blue snow belt. Let me bring in the young man who kicked ass with mono blue snow belt, the incomparable Zack Fink. How you doing there, Zack? How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you for being patient with us, especially with the technical difficulties. We almost had to call it. Then all of a sudden, my wife wakes me up like, I fixed it. I'm like, okay, let me throw some water on my face and get this thing started, because this is a huge interview for me. Reason why is because the world was not expecting in a showcase, Pioneer showcase, that Spirits could succeed. And on top of that, a mono blue snow build. No one saw that one coming. And I applaud you 110%, because we have Winona, we have the Green Devotion deck, we have red deck wins, we have all these other decks that are out there doing exceptionally well, but nobody saw mono blue snow Spirits do what it did. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, let me begin by starting you off so the audience gets to learn a little bit about you, Zack. How long have you been playing Magic, and what made you get into Magic?
So I've been playing Magic for about 10-ish years. I actually started getting into it because my brother really liked Magic, and he was my brother's 5 years older than I am. And I started out thinking that I had always been an athlete, and I never really thought I was going to get into, something like Magic, but I really, really enjoyed how it tests your mind compared to a lot of the other, card games that are available. And the mixture of, trying to mitigate variance while also, having a lot of play to everything really makes me enjoy the game a lot more than I expected. And obviously, I started getting into competitive Magic once I got into college, and then got MTGO a couple years ago and have been rolling ever since.
Well, let me just tell you, I'm a novice and like I've been a paper player since 1999. Um, I'm brand new to MTGO. I'm still learning the intricacies of MTGO. I just started doing a live stream. For those who don't know, I do gameplay. I'm actually running a mono blue snow build right now. I'm 2-1. I lost to Lotus Combo because I couldn't figure out how to correctly uh, counter efficiently. I was like, how's this stupid thing work? And I ended up screwing myself. But it's my first time in a league, so
Yeah,
I'm gonna count that as a victory, even though I lost.
yeah. The using MTGO, I mean, it is a little bit of an old software and has a lot of intricacies that you just need to learn. So it just takes time,
Yeah, me
obviously.
personally, I love how Arena looks. I like how Arena feels. My thing is, I have a problem with Arena in this, and especially because I'm an older player. I know what I want. I know what I want to play. Don't waste my time. I want to get the cards that I want to need. I'm
Yeah,
not going to sit there and open up pack after pack and go, oh, I finally get the card. Oh, I got. No, 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 no. I go to my local retailer. Hey, I'm looking for these cards. Give me my cards. Here's my money. Have a nice day.
yeah,
I don't like to
exactly.
waste time. And to me, that's my one issue that I have with Arena compared to MTGO. Because MTGO, what I want, daddy gets. Daddy wants,
Yep.
daddy
Yeah.
gets. So let me ask you, what made you get into spirits?
So the biggest reason I played Spirits this weekend or last weekend for the showcase was I really wanted to play a deck that I felt could reliably have a good matchup both against Winota and Mono Green. I'm not a person who, I am a person who switches decks depending on where the meta is and what I think can concede, what can succeed, competitively at the time.
Right.
And I heard a lot of different things about spirits, especially the mono blue build. I know you had mentioned Hero Tsukai had been, doing well with it, but a lot of people online were kind of making the deck sound like it was just a meme, or
No.
it wasn't as people, it had good starts, but if you didn't have a quick curious obsession start, you would end up just falling too far behind. And I gave the deck a shot, and you know it impressed me, especially the more I started playing with it, because it really tests your ability to navigate certain board states. And every matchup you play, different cards do different roles. And so I really felt like my mono green and Winota matchups were very good. And so that was I was playing mono red originally, beforehand, and I was not having success in the mono green matchup. So that's the biggest
Okay.
reason I switched it up.
See, what people don't understand, like typical spirits, and especially in modern, and that's where I get most of my expertise is. You know, spirits protect their own, and that's what they're known for. When
Yep.
it comes into Pioneer, and especially with Mono Blue, a whole different ball game. Mono blue is get your creatures out. Yes, smash as quickly as possible. There's here and there where you protect, but then it's control the board state. Counter, counter, counter. And because you have those quick creatures, it's delightful. Now, the one creature that I I'm not a huge fan of, especially in the one drop, is Spectral Sailor. Not a huge fan of the card. But but let me just tell you, when there's times where I'm not playing anything and on my opponent's at the end of my opponent's turn, I will pay the 4 mana and get a card. What a delight that card has just been. Uh, I've been happy to see the turnaround on Spectral Sailor.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing to note is just your options for one drops in spirits is a little limited. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even if you go out of mono blue into say Bant spirits, the one drops you'll see are still, Mausoleum Wander is obviously great. Like that's the big
Mm-hmm.
one. But I mean, you'll see Bant lists sometimes even trim on Spectral Sailor just because it's not the most powerful card in and of itself. But being mono blue allows you to then play Snow and play Ascendant Spirit, which is a very, very powerful card as well.
Definitely powerful. Now, later on, I'll ask you a particular question, and I want to get your reaction on a 1 mana card that I came up with that I'm hoping WotC one day does print. Well, let me ask you, what is your favorite spirit in the deck and why?
So my favorite spirit in the deck is it's definitely Rattle Chains. The card has the most play to all basically all the spirits that you have access to because
Mhm.
it acts as a protection spell in any of the matchups where your opponent has a lot of removal spells, which means oftentimes it's correct to be playing the game at instant speed. And sometimes you don't even use the 2 mana at your opponent's end step because if you flash and Rattle Chains, then they can respond with removal. And in other matchups, if your opponent doesn't have a ton of removal, you can play this game where sometimes, if you have extra mana, you can go like play Rattle Chains, play Supreme Phantom on your end step, untap, and now I have a much bigger board than my opponent was expecting. So,
Yep.
your opponent kind of always, with Rattle Chains in your deck, always has to consider all the possibilities of anything you can do, during their turn.
I applaud you with that because let me just tell you, since playing that deck, I love Rattle Chains before in modern. Okay, I'm a person who plays Azoria Spirits. That's my jam right there in modern. When coming to Pioneer, I try to play the Azorius. It's okay. I played the band, big fan of the band, but I had to go to the Mono Blue Snow, and Rattle Chain sings. Oh my God, I call it, I got poo-pooed by several people on Reddit, and that's okay. I call it the pseudo lord because it's not a real lord, because it comes in and protects, but then it gives all your spirits flash. So I consider that a pseudo lord in a sense. And let me just tell you, if you can protect a creature, you have them on the board state. Now, at the end of you're at the end of each opponent's turn. Oh, you just flash in a creature, boom. Oh, now my next turn, I'm gonna whack you, and I'm gonna keep on whacking you in the face, and
Yep.
it's delicious. Like I want to lick their face to get all their tears. It's like, oh, it's wonderful. Now let me ask you, what made you want to play white blue snow, like mono blue snow, compared to Bant or Azorius? This, Renf, and I'm not besmirching him. He's the spearmaster in Brazil. He loves himself some Bant. Some people are
Yeah.
swinging to Azorius. What made you go a mono blue?
So the biggest reason I went to mono blue was the mono green matchup specifically, where a lot of the time, the Bant Spirits deck, what you gain access to by playing, white is you get access to extra lords and you get access to Spell Queller, which are obviously extremely powerful cards. And when if you can add green for Collected Company as well, your
Mhm.
mana base ends up being a little bit less consistent. So one of the things the Snow deck gains in addition to consistent mana is getting to play Faceless Haven. So if you're playing against a deck like Rakdos Midranger, Is It Phoenix, just having an extra threat that also functions as a land is really powerful.
Mm.
But specifically in the mono green matchup, Spell Queller is not able to counter Storm the Festival. It's not able to counter Cavalier of Thorns.
Mm.
So you're put into a spot where you often just have to race. And the mono green deck is surprisingly fast because even if you're racing, as Bant Spirits, you're not interacting a ton with the board. You're really just playing your lords out and hoping you're able to race. Whereas the mono blue deck, gets access to 4 Geistlight Snare, which,
Mhm.
means that even if somebody on mono green or Wynota is able to develop their board and, play turn 1 Llanowar Elves, turn 2, be it Sylvan Caryatid or Prosperous Innkeeper out of Wynota, you can often just say, well, we're both going to develop our boards, but then when you play the card that matters, be it Cavalier of Thorns, Nisu Shakes the World, Storm the Festival, oftentimes those decks are reliant on resolving one or two key cards. And in Wynota is the same way. You want to resolve Chariot or Wynota, and a lot of the other cards don't have a huge impact on the board. So
Right.
getting to play Geistlight Snare and Lofty Denial alongside, a lower curve, I felt was very important for the meta.
Okay, no, that's fair. I mean, I know like Ralph put out last like a week and a half ago that his whole goal process was to get creatures out quickly, but actually be more interactive with them through the creature base. That's why Skyclave Apparition is
Yep.
is really reliable, especially in Bant and Azorius as well. But you make a strong argument why Mono Blue Snow tends to be the better card. Now, how? Let me ask you. I'm new to MTGO. Maybe some of the viewers or listeners are new to MTGO world, but I've seen Pioneer challenges, but
Yep.
a Pioneer Showcase challenge. Can you tell us? Can you educate me on it? And what does it take for an individual to get into a Showcase challenge?
So the showcase challenges are they are actually open to anybody on MTGO who wants to play them. How they
Okay.
function is they replace the challenge in a weekend, I believe, 3 times per season on MTGO. A season is usually like it's like a 4-month span on MTGO, and so it's open to anybody. You have to enter with qualifier points, however. You need 40 qualifier points, also known as QPs, just to enter. And you can get QPs by either doing well in leagues, there's preliminary events, or doing well in challenges. There's,
Okay.
if you want to go to, you can type into Google MTGO schedule and you can get a schedule, as well as if you go to some of their, preliminary events, you can look at the qualifier points that are either required to enter certain events or you can gain by doing other events.
Okay.
Most of mine come from leagues or preliminaries.
Okay.
And how the showcase challenges work is that they usually have a lot more people because it's than just a normal challenge, because the prize support is better, and the addition is if you top a showcase challenge,
Right.
you then qualify for something called their showcase qualifier, which is an invite only tournament at the end of the season.
Mm.
And so you're going to end up with the 3 groups of top 8 players in each showcase challenge, as well as a couple people at the end that earn an invite in their last chance qualifier. So you're usually going to have like 26, 27 people.
Wow.
And those people compete, and first place in that tournament not only qualifies for the Pro Tour, but also qualifies for the Magic Online Championship, which is an exclusive 8-person only event. So
Wow.
the showcase challenge is your first step to getting a huge chance at making a huge name for yourself.
So were you able to get into that next tier yourself?
Yes, so I am into the showcase qualifier. This is, I believe, my second showcase qualifier I'm playing in,
Well, congratulations.
but thank you. And the last showcase qualifier, I lost in the semifinals.
Oh,
So I'm hoping to, at some point, push through and actually qualify for the Magic Online Championship. But, it's a grind. That's all I
now
can say.
do you get to pick the deck or you have to stick with the same consistent
Nope, I
deck?
can pick the deck again. So if the
Okay.
meta, when I believe the tournament isn't until July,
Okay.
I'm sure the meta will shake up. I'm sure, more people are playing even more with the new cards from New Capenna. I'm
Mm.
sure things will shake out and I will reassess.
Okay. Well, there's a part of me that like selfishly is like go in there with spirits, keep on kicking ass with spirits. But realistically, I understand the position you're in. You may not go that way. Who knows? You may choose Azorius or maybe Bant, but
Absolutely.
who knows? That's the fickle thing when it comes to these things. And I'm actually very happy and very proud. Like I said, yeah, kicked ass out there. Now, for those who don't know, you can reach Zack at Zack Fink 64 on Twitter. Now he's a good lead, he's a good follower. So if you go there, I guarantee he'll put out information here and there about what he's doing, how he's kicking ass and taking names, and not chewing any bubblegum in the middle of doing it. But he's a good guy, and you need to follow this young man, because if he's doing this successfully over and over again, I think it's a moral imperative that you follow him. Just saying.
Thank you very much. I also just want to, make sure for those, it is ZACK, so I don't want
Oh,
people to get
sorry.
no problem. I just don't want, I don't know how close Twitter is with, if you type in if you misspell something, I don't know. I just want to make sure, if you would like to follow me, I would very much appreciate that. And you'll see
ZAK.
all
Hold
my
on.
magic content up there.
It's ZK.
ZACKFINK.
See if we can post it up correctly this time. And there you go. We corrected and fixed it on the fly. Look at that. Ravishing. Hey. Ravishing Renata doing her job and doing a good job at it. Now, Zach, I want to take a look at your deck list, if you don't mind.
Sounds
So
good.
let's bring up your deck list. There it is. And it's your Mono Blue Snow by you. Now, let's look at the deck list real quick. You have 27 creatures. You have 4 Ascendant Spirits, 4 Muslim Wanderers, 4 Spectral Sailors, 4 Rattle Chains, 4 Shacklegeist, 4 Supreme Phantoms, and 3 Brazen Borrower. I can't complain here. I like everything you did. It's just different from what Hiro Tsuki does, because he only uses 2 Brazen Borrower. Now, if we continue going, in the spells, you have 4 Curious Obsession, 4 Geistlight Snares, and then 3 Lofty Denials. And there's another question there. What happens is that Hiro Tsuki, he only runs 2 Lofty Denials. No, Spell Pierce, and then he runs what is this thing? Something of Icon. Ancestry of
Icon
Icon.
of Ancestry. Yeah.
Thank you. Icon of Ancestry. What made you do that? What made you go Brazen Borrower and add a Lofty instead of the Spell Pierce, and not use the Icon of Ancestry?
So
Ancestry of
Spell
Icon.
Pierce is, a super efficient card. Obviously more efficient than Lofty Denial, but specifically, I did expect a ton of Wynota. Spell Pierce, unfortunately, cannot counter the mainstay card, Wynota. And I was a little bit concerned that, only having 4 Geistlight Snares as actual and essentially no main deck removal. Like, I know Shacklegeist, it can answer something, and Brazen Borrower can bounce Wynota for a turn, but if Wynota hits the battlefield and they attack, the game is likely going to be over. So you really need to deal with it when it's actually on the stack. So I wanted to, I knew I wanted a few more counter spells. You're going to see a lot of Spirits players with Lofty Denial in the sideboard. So I knew I wanted extra counter spells in the main that could counter creatures as well. So I moved the Lofty Denials into the main board. And then what that also does is it allows me to have extra sideboard slots that are meant for more specific matchups. Like Lofty Denial is, obviously I said for Wynota and Mono Green, but it's never bad. The card is always, 2 mana, assuming you have a flyer on board, which almost the entire deck is. It's gonna be a good counter spell. So I mainly wanted to streamline the deck and make the sideboard for the specific matchups that I wanted to address.
Okay, no, it's a solid. Me personally, I have the Spell Pierce, and there's sometimes where I feel like I'm holding on to the Spell Pierce, and it's not doing the job it needs to be done. So you make a valid point why doing so. Now, the icon. Why didn't you put the icon in the deck?
So Icon of Ancestry is a very interesting card. It's very, very slow in what it does. It is a 3 mana, it's essentially a 3 mana lord, but it isn't a creature itself. And then so it needs your other creatures to be on board, and then you can pay even more mana in order to gain card advantage. So my biggest problem that I had with the card overall, especially in game 1, I think it's a reasonable sideboard card, was ever since Nykthos and Wynota have popped up more, and ever since Izzet has been moving more towards playing copies of like Ledger Shredder or or Quick Thing in the Ice starts, I often felt
Right.
like I wasn't able to, relish the card advantage side of the card.
Mhm.
And that especially in game one, I was kind of pressured to play to the battlefield quicker. And I often felt like, rather than tapping out for a 3-mana card that, doesn't directly impact the board in its own, I
Mhm.
would rather have additional copies of interaction, be it Brazen Borrower or Lofty Denial.
Okay, that's valid. I mean, personally, I love the fact that you did add in the brazen bar because to me it does make sense. Nothing beats, bouncing something an opponent has, and next thing like when it's on their turn to attack and they go, "Oh, I'm going to attack with this." It's like, "Oh, no, 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 you're not. You thought you were going to attack. No, that gets bounced, and now you have to wait till your second main phase to play the spell, and I'm more than likely going to counter it." So
Yeah, exactly.
that's wonderful. Now
Brazen
let me.
Borrower really allows you to it's a versatile card where, at minimum it's a 3/1 flash flyer, which
Mhm.
fits well with the deck. And then if anything does, slip through, like some of the games you are, because you need to play fast sometimes you can't afford to, just hold up mana every turn. Sometimes it is correct to, jam a Supreme Phantom on your turn,
Mhm.
and then your opponent often feels like, oh, well, now's my chance to resolve my cards. And then next turn, often you can go, bounce your card, hold up counterspell for the card that already resolved. And now that my Supreme Phantom's already in play, I'm racing you faster than you can replay your cards.
Correct. I mean, that's why I love a mono blue snow. Now let me get into the lands because this was a head scratcher for me because I'm sitting here
Yeah.
like, huh? And then a friend of the show, Nikachu MTG. I don't know if you know the young man based at Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. He brought up the same thought process I did,
Yep.
and it's your 22 lands. They're beautiful. They're wonderful. What I did in my thing is I put 3 faceless havens and then 19 snow covered lands. You have 4 faceless havens and 18 snow covered lands. Why?
So this was actually a last minute change. So you're going to see an Ottawara in the sideboard. Originally, how my
Mm-hmm.
deck it was 3 faceless havens, 18 snow covered islands, and 1 Ottawara replacing one of the snow covered islands. Same amount of blue sources. It
Right.
is a little bit awkward with Ascendant Spirit and Faceless Haven, but again, that was a bit of a concession to Wynota, where playing even having a 4-mana card that just bounces Wynota for a turn still has enough utility that I think
Right.
it was warranted. But I did expect, ever since Ledger Shredder got more popular and Rakdos midrange was seeing more play, I made a kind of a last minute decision that I really wanted the maximum amount of man lands,
Okay.
in the deck, in the main. And I didn't have time, because it was last minute, to grab another sideboard card. So I kind of just shoved the Ottawara into the sideboard, to be honest,
Okay.
and moved the Faceless Haven back in the main. So if I had the choice, it would be 4 Faceless Haven, 17 Snow Covered Islands, 1 Ottawara, and then have another good
A flex
sideboard
spot
card
in
in
the
that
sideboard.
slot. Yeah.
Okay. Now that's a good answer because I'm sitting here like I'm scratching my head like this doesn't make sense, but it makes sense and it's kind of weird, but it's good. It's kind of
Yeah. I
the
The
French
Faceless
would say
Haven is like, it definitely can be a bit awkward when you're trying to double spell. If you have a hand of like, let's say Snow Covered Island, Faceless Haven, and then you have triple 1-drop. It's like you can't actually play all 3 1-drops by turn 2.
right.
So that's the big reason why you'll sometimes see the fourth Faceless Haven in the sideboard. But I really do think the ability to just maximize your chances of having one Faceless Haven in play for when you're playing, any of the attrition based matchups is extremely important.
Okay. Now, one card that I actually fell in love with in my mono blue snow build, and people are gonna go, "Really, you like that card?" And it's a Spectral Adversary. Let me ask you, why didn't you put Spectral Adversary even in the sideboard?
So Spectral Adversary is, I think the card's decent. I think the card is definitely worse than the 24 major creatures that are, all the ones except Brazen Borrower. I think those ones all need to be 4-ofs in general. As far as Spectral Adversary, you'll often see 1 or 2 copies instead of Brazen Borrower or instead of Lofty Denial. I really just, I felt like I just wanted a little bit of additional cheap interaction for, again, cards like Wynota or Ledger Shredder that hit the board through counter magic. And Spectral Adversary, while it can technically deal with, it's one of those cards that hits the board, it requires more, Brazen Borrower to bounce only costs 2 mana. Spectral Adversary, you do need to get to a full 4. So I felt, in testing, I kind of felt like I wanted just additional interaction rather than, additional cheap creatures. If that
Okay.
makes sense.
No, it makes tons of sense. It just doesn't hurt to ask. Now, what was kind of funny, Nikachu brought it up, and I was like, the only, and I'm going to mention it is Mutavault. Mutavault is Pioneer legal.
Yes.
Why would his maybe his point of view or his thought process was, why would we want to put Faceless Haven instead of Mutavault? Mutavault is cheaper. It's a 2/2 creature. It becomes a 3/3 creature with Supreme Phantom. But to me, I see the why with the Faceless Haven because of the Ascendant Spirit. Am I
Yeah,
correct in
so
thinking this process?
this is the big concession. Like, I've even seen people cutting some Ascendant. I've seen lists that cut Ascendant Spirit so that they can play Mutavault instead of Faceless Haven, and I think Ascendant Spirit is too good. And I think the upgrade of Mutavault over Faceless Haven is smaller than the inability to activate Ascendant Spirit because you have a Mutavault instead of a Faceless Haven, right?
Right.
So that's why you'll sometimes see lists that don't even run an Otawara, right? And I'm willing to be wrong that Otawara should just be another snow-covered island. Like, you really, when you have Ascendant Spirit in play, you really want to get at least to that second chapter, so at least having 3 snowlands in play.
Right.
So, Mutavault is definitely a better card than Faceless Haven. Like, if Mutavault were a snowland, I would be running it over Faceless Haven. Like, that's no question. But
Okay.
the 1-drops, we don't have access to infinite 1-drops, and Ascendant Spirit is just too good.
Oh, one thing I will tell people who aren't playing this deck or who haven't played this deck, when you have Ascendant Spirit out in Battlefield, it looks like a meh card. Like, let's be honest with you, it's just meh. But when you attack and then you have the 2 snow available, your opponent starts thinking like, "Ooh, is he gonna pop it?" And the best
Yeah,
part is when I get to 3 and 4, it's even better.
exactly. It's also, Ascendant Spirit is by far, let's say you're playing an attrition-based matchup, like is it Rakdos, and you're into, your Rakdos opponent thought seizes you a bunch, and you're kind of in top deck mode. And then you have 4 lands in play, or like 5 lands in play, and you draw Ascendant Spirit. It's like, you can immediately get this thing up to, it's a 1-drop, but in reality, it's an enormous mana sink, so it actually ends up being your best top deck in the late game.
Yes, it
Even a
does.
card like Spectral Sailor, again, serves a similar purpose, where it's a 1-drop, but let's say you draw it on turn 5. Well, it's a 1-drop that I can now just start sinking mana into.
Mhm.
Same with Faceless Haven, etc. So even though the deck is a lot of just cheap cards, you can play an attrition-based matchup and still succeed in the late game.
I mean, like, you consider on the end of your opponent's turn, if you don't got no creatures, I'll just sink some mana into it. Oh, I didn't feel like attacking this turn. My opponent's attacking. I'll block with this. I'll pump it up right then and there.
Yep.
They're sitting there like, oh no, I didn't expect it. All right, attack, and I already popped it up for the 2. Now I'll attack, or I'll pump it up to the 3, so it's a 4/4 flyer. Comes in, does its
Yeah.
thing. it's wonderful.
Exactly. And
This-
doing it at instant speed means your opponent can, if it's a 2-3 and your opponent has a 3-4, it's like they can't block it. They can't successfully block it because you can just sink more mana into it. But then if they don't block, they'll just take a bunch of damage. So they're kind of in a rock and a hard place.
Now and I hate to say it, and if you anybody who wants to go back and look at my old catalog, one of my first episodes that I did talking about Kaldheim, I poo-pooed the hell out of Ascendant Spirit. I poo-pooed that crap out of it. I thought that card was nothing but pure fecal material, and I was 100% wrong. I like there's egg all over my face because now I actually love the card. I think it's a great card to play. But let's get into your sideboard.
Yep.
3 dive down. Please explain.
All right. 3 dive down is really important for when your opponent has a lot of cheap removal, like matchups like Is It Phoenix. And the big thing that dive down does that no other card does, even Spell Pierce, is there's a lot of people, because of how popular Winota is, playing Rending Volley. And Rending Volley is a red instant, and it deals 4 damage to a white or blue creature, but it can't be countered. So when you're playing cards like Curious Obsession, you really want to be able to protect your cards. You have 4 Rattle Chains in the main, but it's a very common play pattern for you to go 1-drop, untap, play a land, play Curious Obsession, and your opponent's like, I have Rending Volley, or whatever, or a removal spell, and you go, I'll dive down it, for 1 mana, attack, get the Curious Obsession trigger, force you to have another removal spell, and if you don't, I can run away with the game.
Now, then let's go to Witness Protection. This is a sleeper card. People have not been talking about it. This is new Capenna. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, Witness Protection serves a few roles. The first is you against any aggressive deck like Mono Red, which your matchup is pretty weak. Those are some of your worst matchups. You really need to be able to slow them down. So being able to put this on, even just a Soulscar Mage or Monastery Swiftspear, the 1/1 that comes from Witness Protection rarely matters because your deck is entirely flyers, so the 1/1 can't block, and your deck is fast enough usually that it can race, without the 1/1 attacking you mattering. But there are a ton of extremely problematic cards that you need to be able to answer if they hit the board. For Mono Red, it's Eidolon of the Great Revel. If they're on the play and they play an Eidolon of the Great Revel, you can't race that. It's nearly impossible to actually race a turn 2 Eidolon on the draw.
Right.
If your opponent in Winota has a turn 2 Voice of Resurgence, again on the play, so you can't counter it, you can't really afford to interact at instant speed anymore because you'll end up giving them a token, tokens that are enormous and end up racing back. So having the ability to just play this 1 mana enchantment that, is kind of an answer any problematic creature that your opponent plays. Same with Ledger Shredder. It answers that. It answers Thing in the Ice. And simultaneously in a race, it also makes your Geistlight snares cost less because it is an enchantment. So in any hand where you don't draw Curious Obsession, the ability to play a spirit, play Witness Protection, and actually have Geistlight Snare cost 1 mana instead of 2, that is also, a big deal. And, all of these things combined, I think, make Witness Protection good enough as a card. Obviously you're mono blue, so your options for good removal are limited.
Mm-hmm.
We're not spoiled by fatal pushes and stuff.
Exactly. Well, let's go with the 3 Aethergust. I'm assuming that's for Winona. This is for mono green and also mono red. Like
Yep.
just
It's just
poof,
a good card, just a good catch-all.
Get out of here.
It's similar to a counterspell in the fact that, even though they can put the card on top, oftentimes if you're racing them, even just acting as a semi-time walk effect is good enough. And unlike a counterspell, you can remove a card like Voice of Resurgence or something that hits the board. And so it's just a good card.
And then number 4, 4 Mystic Disputes. That just makes sense, if you're going against a mono blue, if you're going against another blue deck that wants to counter your stuff, it only makes sense to put that. And then you have the 1 Ottawa. We talked about that. Now, if you were to swap out or remove the Ottawa and put in the main, what card would you want in there?
Yeah, so two cards that I've seen that I think are very powerful. Unlicensed Hearse from the new set is a very, very powerful card that every time I've played against it or with it, it has impressed. And I don't think this is the best deck for it, but I think the card is just so powerful against Izzet Phoenix that it's definitely worth an inclusion. The other card would be, I think, March of Swirling Mists, which is somewhat inefficient. It X and a blue, and you can phase out X target creatures, but you can remove blue cards from your hand to make it cost less.
Right.
That has utility both against, you can phase out cards like Winota, or, you can phase out cards on your opponent's mono red side as a time walk, but you can also phase out your own cards.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the matchup, for example, that I lost to in the showcase was against blue white control. And
Right.
Supreme Verdict is a very problematic card. You can't
Mhm.
counter it, and it's just going to wipe your board. But if
Right.
your opponent casts Supreme Verdict and you go phase out my three threats, untap, they come back. It's
Wah,
pretty
wah,
hard for your
wah.
opponent to beat that. So it's definitely
Exactly.
worth considering.
Okay, so you hear it here, ladies and gentlemen. We found a soft spot in his deck, and he found a way to make it even better and stronger. And ouch, I feel bad for his future opponents. So, what are let's now that we've broken down your deck, okay, let's look at the decks that you did face.
Yep.
We need to go to the next slide if possible, Ravishin. And you faced elves. You had your you got one loss and then two wins back to back. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so elves is kind of like a tier 3-ish deck. It's not super popular. I don't think it's that great, but it is an aggressive deck that you're going to play a bunch of mana dorks, and then you're just going to jam. It plays Collected Company, it plays Shaman of the Pack, so it's very, very fast. So it's very common. I was on the draw, I lost game one, and I wasn't surprised. I wasn't able to race it. This is a type of matchup where like Witness Protection played a huge deal, right?
Okay.
Where I got to board in the 4 Witness Protection, I got to board in the Aether Gusts, and I just got to slow my opponent down enough that I was able to race them. And elves can't block flyers, so
No,
if
they
you can
cannot.
slow them down a bit, you're going to be fine.
Well, tell us about Esper. I don't even want to try to pronounce that. Some Parhelion.
Yeah,
Is it
Esper
Parhelion?
Parhelion. This is our Esper Greasefang. This is the
Right.
essentially the combo deck of, if you can discard Parhelion, which is a huge vehicle, and then you can play Greasefang, return it, and attack, your opponent's in a lot of trouble. This matchup is extremely good. You have a bunch of counter spells for Greasefang. A lot of their cards don't matter because it's just ways for them to cycle through their deck. And then Shacklegeist, even on board, means that you can tap the Parhelion before it even attacks. It's just very difficult for your opponent to actually win the game.
And then Izzet Phoenix? You went 2-1. This is a matchup a lot of people are a little nervous about, a little skittish about.
Yeah,
It
this
doesn't
is
seem
this is
like
the
you
big
are.
matchup where um, getting game one is very important because they're going to
Mhm.
board in a lot of extra removal spells and mystical disputes. So it's going to be somewhat difficult to win both sideboard games. But this is the matchup where Dive Down really shines. The ability to have 1 mana protection for your opponent's removal means that you are often forcing your opponent to answer each thing you play. But
Okay.
the reason it's a little scary is they have a lot of good cheap removal. They have card advantage that's cheap too in Treasure Cruise, and Thing in the Ice can definitely be scary. Though, this is again another matchup where having a flash game plan is really useful. My Is It a Phoenix opponent played turn 2 Thing in the Ice and flipped it
Oof.
game 1 and still lost because the rattle chain,
Wow.
the plan of, okay, I'll take 7 on your end step, play rattle chains, play my 2/1 drops again that you bounced. They still have to deal with those cards.
Right.
So
Oh, so they come in your benefit. Now you went with the white blue control. This is the matchup that you didn't have success in.
nope.
What happened there?
So game 1, I actually think I'm favored, and I got really got by a one of I had double Curious Obsession on a 1-drop with Geistlight Snare backup, and my opponent had the one of a Gonjo, the land that you can discard to remove a card, and I didn't, and my counterspell didn't work, and I definitely felt favored and lost to the one of, which is fine. That happens. And then game 2, my opponent had double Supreme Verdict. I mulliganed. It happens. But
That sucks.
I definitely, Supreme Verdict is definitely the card that assuming blue-white control continues to be a big player in the format, I should probably have some, good cards against it.
Okay, so you heard him talking about the March of the Swirling Winds, something you should definitely consider, ladies and gentlemen, while playing against it. Then you did Is It Control back to back. Back to back Is It Control. You must have been like, yeah, I beat an Is It Control deck, and then I gotta face another one.
Yep. So
Great.
Is It Control differs a little bit from Phoenix and the fact that it's more you play Thing in the Ice, but instead of playing Arclight Phoenix, you're playing additional removal and you're playing Narset, Parter of Veils alongside Collective Defiance.
Okay.
The nice thing is that outside of Thing in the Ice, some of their removal, like Collective Defiance, is inefficient, and cards like Narset don't matter too much. So again, similarly to Is It Phoenix, they're going to be boarding in Rending Volleys and Mystical Disputes. So being able to pick up game 1 is very big, which
Now,
I was able to pick up game 1 in all of the Is It matchups, which was very nice.
I hear you. Now, the next 2 decks, it was the Rakdos. I faced the 2 victories I had so far in my, I guess me playing I forget what the hell they call them, the 5 matchup.
The leagues, yep.
The leagues, thank you. I went toe to toe with Rakdos. Let me just tell you, I do not fear Rakdos at all. That's like this, like I don't want to say it's an easy win, but I'm not, crying. I'm not really worried about the deck. Tell us about these victories. Your double victory and then your win victory.
Yeah, so these were both against Rakdos mid-range. So, they're playing a lot of just solid, powerful cards, Graveyard Trespasser, Bone Crusher Giant, Kalidas, Chandra, Torch of Defiance, etc. Part of the reason I think the matchup is reasonable is that, they're very heavily based on just thought seizing you and then playing good creatures, but it's like a lot of my cards are very redundant. They do a lot of the same things, so I'm not really afraid of Thoughtseize. And a lot of the Rakdos' removal spells are, somewhat inefficient, like Bone Crusher Giant. Sometimes they have to stomp something, you rattle chains it, and then, they don't even get the Bone Crusher Giant to cast. And they're good ground creatures like Bone Crusher or Graveyard Trespasser. They don't block your flyers, so they're often forced to just keep casting, their 3 and 4 mana cards, and you can counter the ones that matter.
Well, my favorite thing is they always go after the Ascendant Spirit. They are scared to
Yep.
death of the Ascendant Spirit. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're playing against this deck, understand they're going to do everything in their power to kill that Ascendant Spirit. Now, you went again against Is It Control. Was this any different from the previous matchup?
Nope, basically the same exact deck. And again, same exact result. So
now this next one, your 10th round, Winona. That actually surprised me. A double quit win. I was like, I expected maybe a loss, but you came in there swinging hard.
So this was actually my finals matchup. My round 10 was against Green Devotion, and my round 11 was Winona. So
okay.
I might have made a mistake on Twitter, but those were both easy 2-0 victories very quickly, and those were the 2 matchups I was prepared for. So
really, for the mono green, because I'll be honest with you, the mono green deck is brutal. It looks like a mean matchup, especially against the mono blue snow.
Yeah, mono green is again a big reason why I added Lofty Denial. And a big reason why I played mono blue is you're a little bit lower to the ground, so you can race. And mono green in its current form, because it's really trying to maximize the power of Nykthos, is trying to, play, the first couple turns are just developing, play Llanowar Elves, play Kiora, play Wolf Willowhaven, just ways to develop your mana. And so we both kind of develop our battlefields. And then their big payoffs, they don't play a ton of big payoffs. They're playing like 4 Storm the Festival, 4 Cavalier of Thorns, a couple Nissu Shakes the Worlds, and a few Karn the Great Creator.
Right.
And so oftentimes they're relying on resolving, they're only going to have 1 or 2 big payoffs in their hand a lot of the time. And so if you can just develop your board and go counter your big threat, they're just going to be out of gas.
Right.
And then post board, you get to board in your Aether Gusts as even more ways to deal with them. So I think mono green was, again, a big reason why I played this version of the deck. And then as far as Wynota, similarly, a huge amount, they're 23 lands, and then they're playing 8 elves and 4 prosperous innkeepers. So that's already 35 cards just to develop mana. And then so outside of Voice of Resurgence, the big payoffs for them are like Ezeka's Chariot, Wynota, and they play Tovolar's Huntmaster, but they're not going to get to that usually in the matchup. It's too slow.
Okay.
So oftentimes it can be as simple as they play Elf, they play Innkeeper, and then they jam a Wynota, you counter it, and their battlefield goes from being I have Wynota on the board and I win the game to I don't have Wynota and my cards don't do anything. So this is again the matchup where Witness Protection really came in the second victory. I was able to Witness Protection, a Voice of Resurgence, and then counter Wynota, and that was it.
Nice. Very nice. Now, let me ask you, when you're facing this deck, was there any particular deck that actually stood out and you're like, damn, this is a really tough matchup where you just, you had difficulty dealing with it?
Yeah, so the hardest matchup I was fortunate enough to dodge is Mono Red. I was able to dodge that the whole tournament, which is extremely good. Mono Red, the reason it's a little bit of a problem is you're a tempo-based deck that relies on your cards being more efficient than your opponents. Mono Red is a very efficient deck that is faster than you and has a lot of very cheap removal spells because they're burn spells, but they can, interact with your cards very efficiently. They also have the way to cheese the matchup of just playing a turn 2 Eidolon, and you are going, because all of your cards make you take 2 damage, every single card in your deck. It's very, very difficult to beat, and you don't have removal spells for it. So this is a big reason why post board, I'm boarding and Dive Down, Aether Gust, and Witness Protection, and just hoping that I can get both sideboard games. Izzet is still a little bit of a concern, I think, especially when they move towards Ledger Shredder. That card is extremely powerful and also is an enormous flying blocker that makes it hard to attack into.
Yeah.
So that is a matchup where, against Izzet, normally my plan was to board in just for, the 4 Mystical Disputes, but if people start playing more Ledger Shredder, we might have to board in Witness Protection too. I don't want to be overboarding in that matchup, but those two are probably the big concerns. Again, blue-white in my current build is a little bit scary, but the nice thing is that this deck can metagame for, a variety of different decks. So if you're afraid of mono red, you can add more Aether Gust. You can add Cerulean Drake is an extremely powerful card that some people play in the sideboard.
Yep.
I thought I played Aether Gust more over it because I wanted to have more game in the mono green matchup. But if you're afraid of mono red and there's a lot of mono red, you can play Cerulean Drake in the sideboard. There's good cards you have access to in mono blue.
Yeah, I played when I first got into Pioneer, like when I first started, Star City Games had an event over in East Rutherford where the New York Giants and Jets play. And basically, I went in there with the Cerulean Drake. I went with a play set just because I didn't know, I was going to match. And next thing you know, I matched up with Feather. I was like, oh, okay, not a problem, Feather. Come on, bring it, and I'll block with my creatures. And I ended up winning the match. So it was pretty good. Now, is there anything you would have done differently in your deck or your play style?
I mean, I mentioned the Otawara, obviously. That should have been another sideboard card. I don't honestly. I felt like I called the event pretty well. I was surprised to not play against Winota and Mono Green during the Swiss. I didn't
Okay.
play against them until top 8, but the fact that I was able to 7-1 the Swiss without playing against the two matchups I was prepared for really showed that the deck was a lot more powerful than even I expected playing it.
Okay.
And I think the adjustments I made with Lofty Denial and Brazen, additional Lofty Denials and Brazen Bars to the main, the 4 Faceless Haven, all of those paid off a lot. So,
Okay. Basically, that basically answers my next question. Like, what were your feelings? And obviously, you expressed how well it that this deck is. Now, with the Pro Tour coming, do you believe this version of Spirits is it ready? Is it positioned in the right spot for this format, and for Pro Tour players to go, this is the it
yeah.
deck?
So I think this deck is very powerful. Another thing that I do like about it is that it's a very difficult deck both to play with and against, meaning if you are very prepared on either side, if you're very prepared against mono blue or playing with mono blue, you get an edge. And I felt like, especially for this tournament, people didn't really know how to play against mono blue.
No, they
So
don't.
I do expect now, after the showcase, I do expect people to start playing with and against it more, which is a little bit concerning, but I think the deck is just super powerful. And again, I said you can make a bunch extra metagame decisions depending on what decks and cards you're afraid of. I think your game plan's pretty streamlined, but like I said, cards like Cerulean Drake, there's just cards for any
There's
matchup you
answers.
can imagine.
Right. Like here's Tasuki. I don't know if you watched the show, but since the very beginning, I've been doing the shout out section where people, in their leagues, if they top 5, I'll shout you out. If you do exceptionally one of these things, I will shout you out. I don't care where you are in the world, I will shout you out. Hiro Tasuki, he's been taking Mono Blue
Yep.
Snow since
Yep.
December and top beating 5-0, 5-0, 5-0, 5-0, 5-0. To me, it's no surprise that he's been kicking names and taking ass. Like it's a
Yeah.
wonderful, delicious thing. And to see someone else come out nowhere and just go boom, people. The way I look at Mono Blue Snow, it's not your typical deck. Yeah, it's a tribal deck, yes, but in a sense, no, because you can't have a smooth brain to play this deck. Okay, there is a lot of thought. You have to really. It's a thinking man's deck. It,
Yeah.
it truly is truly a thinking person's deck. Because if there's a young lady out there, I don't want to say, hey, but this is a thinking person's deck. You have to think. There are moments where you're going to make a move that's counterintuitive, and it will work into your benefit. And then the long game, they're going to, you would have gone, damn, I shouldn't have done that, but it got me the victory.
Yeah, I mean, even mono blue historically, I mean, there's even been mono blue tempo decks and standard in different standard sets as well. The decks tend to be, a lot of your cards are relatively underpowered on the surface, right?
Right.
Where, you look at a card like Spectral Sailor, you look at a card like Rattle Chains. It's like these cards aren't super impactful or efficient, but they're the synergies you gain by when every card works together means that it's very difficult for your opponent to play against because you can have any range of different cards. And um I think that every the synergies and everything just make the deck look a lot more powerful, play out a lot more powerful than it
Mm-hmm.
looks. And
Well,
that's a really important thing for it. And you also get the benefit of, yeah, I mean, there are starts where you just go one drop into Curious Obsession with Geistlight Snare backup, and your opponent is so far behind that, it doesn't matter.
see, that's what I love about the synergy with spirits. People just sleep on it, and the synergy with spirits, it's wonderful. It's like there's a wonderful saying that many married couples should learn to say. It's happy spouse, happy house, happy spirits, happy house too. It has that synergy, and it's wonderful. So I love the fact that you're saying this deck, may be the it thing when it comes to Pro Tour. Now, one deck that I did say that I wanted to talk to you about it's a slow creeper. This thing is, I believe this thing is going to start making tons of noise, and it's Giada
Yeah.
and Angels. I think this Angel deck people don't know about. I'm
Yeah.
looking at this deck and it bothers me. It bothers me because spirits, it's our evasion, it's flying.
Yep.
Angels, they're using the same thing and they're gaining life and they're bumping up their creature's power and toughness, and it bothers me. It bothers me a lot because there's no interaction with deck. The only interaction is I gain life and my creatures get bigger,
Yep.
and that bothers me a lot. And if it wasn't for Giada that came out in from the streets of New Capenna, this deck would be not even a thought.
Yep.
Now I see it's like this. It's sick. Like, what is your thought on this deck? And if you were to face it with this mono blue snow build, how would you go
Yeah.
about attacking it and kicking its ass?
So I will be completely honest. A recipe for success, if you are looking to try to, beat mono blue and not necessarily join it, mono blue gains a huge edge because all your creatures fly. So one of the, recipes for success against aggro and tempo decks historically has been if you can go slightly bigger than your opponent, you often will find yourself being, having more success because your cards are just a little bit more powerful, even if they're not quite as efficient.
Right.
And both Bant Spirits and Angels kind of satisfy that, where I don't think they are very good matchups for mono blue. Both of these decks are playing, a slew of flyers that are all slightly bigger than your flyers, efficient enough that you can't just go under them. But, if both people aren't playing a ton of removal and both people are playing a bunch of flyers, but your opponents are playing bigger flyers that grow bigger over time, it can be a bit concerning. The hope when you're playing mono blue is that, the Angels deck does have some cards that are a little bit weak. They're not going to have the perfect, Giada into Resplendent Angel curve every single time
Right.
into Collected Company. You're not going to have that curve every time. And as a more efficient deck, if you are able to counter the big bad angels that matter, you can still go under them. Also, this is a matchup where Witness Protection again is big, shutting off a big flyer, putting it on Giada and making sure that card doesn't go get out of hand. You can definitely race them. Shacklegeist is enormous too. If they're going all in on a couple big flyers, you can go wide and tap down the cards that matter.
Right.
So I think Shacklegeist is an enormous play in that matchup too.
Okay, witness protection and Shacklegeist. Those are the keys. Yeah, because let me just tell you, anybody, I what bothers me is that they poo-pooed me on this deck, this card that I have in my mind, and they say it's too powerful. And I'm like, how is it too powerful? And they're looking at Giada, and you look at Ragavan. Spirits is completely underwhelmed, especially in the 1 mana spot. And it's time that we need a 1 mana, good, solid mana 1 creature because of Ragavan. Like Giada, what? It has flying, it has vigilance, it's a 2/2 creature. Oh, it taps to allow you to play another angel onto the battlefield. Oh, and when the creature comes on the battlefield, it gets +1/+1 for every other angel that's on the battlefield.
Yep.
Did I bump my head and miss something? That these cards are just too underpowered? Okay, let me ask you, because you're gonna laugh at the card I have in mind. If Watsy came up to you and said, Zach, you kicked ass, you took names, you did everything you had to succeed in this upcoming Pioneer Challenge that you're gonna be facing shortly, create me a card. What card are you making for Watsy?
So if I'm specifically trying to make mono blue better, the biggest thing that I have noticed is every lord that isn't Supreme Phantom is white. This has been a bit of this is the one area of mono blue that I wish we had a little bit more. Was some of the games where you're trying to race, it's so much easier to race when you have Supreme Phantom in play than when you don't. So if they, I would love to see another Lord in mono blue. And is for, the other multicolored decks. Another thing I'd love to see would be all the playable spirits that are 1 mana are all, you have Mausoleum Wander and you have, Spectral Sailor's okay. It's not great. I would love
Right.
to play a better 1-drop. And Ascendant Spirit, while it is very good, requires you to play Snow, which really forces you to play monocolor
Right.
because all the other, pathways and shocks and stuff aren't Snow. So, maybe they'll print at some point, a 1-mana spirit that isn't blue. Why? Who says they can't print a white 1-mana spirit that's good?
Okay.
I would, that would be a big thing that would help me drive to more playing Azorius Spirits. Would be, the biggest weakness in Azorius and Bant is just you don't have as many powerful 1-drops when you aren't playing Ascendant Spirit. But all it takes is them to print 1 card and things change. For mono blue, they printed Ascendant Spirit and they printed Geistlight Snare, and that's what made me switch over to mono blue. But
okay. Well, here are 2 spirits. I'm going to give you 2. Ready?
all right.
The first one, you're going to go, they'll never print it. And I'm saying because of Giada and because of Ragavan, it's a moral imperative. And I'm okay with it being a legend. A 1 mono blue or mono white, it could be either one, but I prefer mono blue. 1/1 flying creature, and it's called Peekaboo. It's basically peek on a creature, flyer. So I don't know if you know peek. You get to look at opponent's hand and you get to draw a card and make that a legendary creature. Peekaboo.
Interesting. Yeah, it's sort of like a Spectral Sailor, but then you don't have to sink a ton of mana into to get the benefit.
Nope. And the fact that you get to see what's in your opponent's hand, you can sit there and engage what you can do, the interactivity. I think it's a +1. And the fact that it's legendary, it benefits Otawara. Wonderful. It's delicious. The other one I have was hold on. What's it called? Ghost Quarters Attendant. It's a 1 generic, a 1 white, a 1/2 creature, flying creature that has Ghost Quarter on it.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, that definitely is a very interesting card.
So
And
what
they
do you
could
think?
definitely print that. I mean, that is a
Those
very
are solid cards. These are just simple, humble. People are saying that my Peekaboo is a little too strong. They're like, oh no, that's too powerful. And I'm like, no, before I was like non-legendary, it's okay. Let's make it legendary. And I would like to have 2 versions of the card, one going like this and the other one going like this.
Interesting.
That'd be funny. That'd be cute for me. But what are your thoughts? You think would you play with those cards in Spirits?
Peekaboo definitely. I mean, that would be a very easy inclusion. I think that card is extremely powerful. I mean, just replacing itself on this is already very big for a flyer. That's already just better than Spectral Sailor on the surface. So outside of the fact that it was legendary, but
and the fact that it's less powerful than Giada and Ragavan.
I will say with regards to Ragavan that they did specifically print that into a modern only set. They, there's a reason they didn't print that into Pioneer, and if it wasn't Pioneer, that would not be okay.
Yeah. But still, I'm just throwing that caveat out there. It's just like they were able to print those things. Give me my Peekaboo. Watsy, I know
power creep is definitely real. And
I know Watsy watches the show. I know you do. Look, Mark Rosewater. I'm calling you out. I'm also calling Devin Varhey. I know you watch the show. No, they don't. They don't watch the show. But if you watch the show, I want my Peekaboo. You heard it here. I mention it all the time. Damn it. I want a card that just goes like this. Peekaboo. That would be cute. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And make it a legendary creature. A fat Hispanic, guy going. But that's no here or there. Now, for those who don't know, you can reach Zack Fink 64 on Twitter. This young man's a great follow. He does post what he does, and let me just tell you, this is an upcoming individual who's just taking names, taking ass, he's just taking everything. You kidding me? Don't leave a dollar bill because that thing's gone. You know what I mean? He's the real deal. and the fact that he was successful with a mono blue snow belt. I can't wait to see what you do in the near future. Any insights, any little nuggets you want to throw out our way, just out of curiosity?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for having me. I
Not a
always
problem.
love talking Magic, so no issues there. And Twitter, I will be I play a lot of different decks and stuff in leagues and stuff, and if I have success or I have some insight, it's definitely the place to check me out for any Magic content. So
Well, there you go. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, you can follow this young man at Zack Fink 64 on Twitter. It's a moral imperative. Hopefully, we get to see him one day do a Twitch live feed, maybe YouTube. Who knows? The world is a silly and fickle place, and we never know what's going to happen. So, Ravishing, what did you think of this episode?
I think the episode went well.
Yeah, Zach is a great guy, right? We learned a
Thanks.
lot. And let me just tell you, I can't wait to go back and start, playing my mono blue snow belt again. I'm like, woo. Now I have my upkeep, like, okay, I got to pull a couple cards here, pull a couple cards here, and, improve my deck a little bit. I can't wait to play it. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining Zach and I in the Ravishing Renata. And with that being said, the next time you're kicking your opponent's ass, make sure they say, that's Bushi. We're out of here.